Here in Portland, there's a renewed push to allow recreational marijuana users to gather and smoke in cannabis cafes.
Yeah, Portland's handful of cannabis cafes had to close after a change in the state's clean air law. But as Fox 12's Simon Gutierrez explains now, some pot users are hoping that law will change again.
A medical marijuana user for years, Jeremy Robbins is caught between two separate realities.
As a medical cannabis user, I am every day putting myself at risk of losing my housing because I am using this medication that my doctors have said is the best thing for me.
Robbins lives in federally subsidized housing. Federal law still considers marijuana use illegal, even though Oregon law doesn't.
Not having any options, it just, again, it feels discriminatory.
With that in mind, Robbins is supporting a push to change state law to allow for places where people could use marijuana in a safe, legal space.
Having a space for people to gather that are using this medicine where they can interact and talk with others has a huge benefit.
A change in the Oregon Indoor Clean Air Act a couple years ago specified that cannabis couldn't be smoked in a public place or place of employment. After the law change, Portland's world-famous cannabis cafe closed down after a complaint and the threat of fines. But this upcoming legislative session, there's a push to change that law.
What we have right now is unsustainable. We have laws that basically make it illegal for you to consume cannabis unless you own your own home.
Sam Chapman is legislative director of the New Revenue Coalition, which will be lobbying state lawmakers to allow cannabis cafes to operate legally. In mid-December, the group held a fundraiser to rally support.
All we ask is that we can smoke cannabis out of public view and be treated not like lepers, but like members of society.
The group hopes to introduce legislation that would allow people to use marijuana at standalone cafes, as well as tours and tastings hosted by growers.
Overall, we're not asking for anything different. There are hookah lounges and cigar bars now, and we'd like that same affordance. The difference is that our product does not cause cancer.
A spokesperson for the Oregon Health Authority says the agency supports the Indoor Clean Air Act the way it is and points out that no other state has implemented a statewide public use of cannabis law, and no one knows the full harms or consequences of expanding the use of cannabis into public places. But for Robbins, who says he relies on marijuana to treat muscle spasms and chronic pain caused by a bike crash that left him partially paralyzed, a safe, legal place to smoke would be a welcome change.
Let's have dedicated spaces for this sort of consumption. It doesn't need to go on every street corner, but again, having some place for people to gather, I think, is a really a pretty normal and reasonable thing.
In Northwest Portland, Simon Gutierrez, Fox 12 Oregon.